Hello and welcome to this little video clip around a support that I've created in order for teachers to understand the state standards. Through this work, the intended goal is to um, break the standards down into manageable and measurable learning objectives. So what I've created here is pretty much a graphic organizer that looks at the standard. So in this case, the standard being broken down is 2.1a. This is for sixth grade. So I worked on this with a sixth grade teacher. So we took standard 2.1 and we looked at evidence outcome A, and then you put down here if there's another component to that evidence outcome, you can break that one down too. So this one happened to be little I, and the evidence outcome language was describe how a particular story's or drama's plot unfolds in a series of episodes, as well as how the characters respond or change as the plot moves towards a resolution. What this organizer allows teachers to do is to look at what students need to know and what students need to do. And in the what students need to know, these are usually the nouns within the evidence outcome, and they're usually connected to content understandings. If we're looking at Webb's depth of knowledge chart, they're usually level ones, and they usually come in the form of definitions. The second area, what students need to do, well, these are verbs, and they connect to skills students need in order to meet the demands of the evidence outcome. And the good thing about creating these is they become learning objectives, learning targets, or whatever the language you're using within your buildings in regards to students will be able to blank. And then the final column are we look at the depth of knowledge. So we look to the verbs to see what students are being asked to demonstrate. And what we want to do is make sure we're moving from the level one demand up to level four. And I've also attached down here Webb's depth of knowledge chart. So you're moving from your basic recall of level one up to level four, which are extending their thinking. So primarily we want to push our students through level ones and twos into our level threes and fours, which are those more cognitive demanding verbs and skills that students need to do. So to walk you quickly through what this looks like is, once again, we take our evidence outcome over here and we break it down. So according to the language that exists within our evidence outcome, the content understandings that students need to know are plot and plot structure. They need to understand characters, because it asks here how well the characters respond or change. So that's character development. And as it moves towards its resolution. And something that this teacher and I came up with were types of conflict, because the two types of stories, they're either character driven or they're plot driven. And we all know that plot is driven by the conflicts that exist within that story. So for this evidence outcome, we had three areas of knowledge that students need to know: plot and its structure, character development, and the types of conflict within the story. Now, the skill part, this is what things we ask students to do. And we moved along, all right, from knowing plot and its structure, these two boxes are connected. They need to be able to, the basic level is identify elements of a plot. Then they need to make predictions based on those episodes. Then they need to summarize the plot and then draw conclusions as to why an author would use this structure. And some of this language could change depending on your performance tasks that you're asking students to do. But primarily, you're moving from identifying elements of plot to drawing conclusions or analyzing whether those specific elements of plot were effective. Character development, once again, we're identifying character traits. Then we're making inferences around character changes and motivations. All of this is connected back to, if we were to go back over here, these are related to the language of the standard itself, or the evidence outcome, I should say. Drawing conclusions around character and what they may represent and why they maybe didn't change. And then analyzing characters and how those characters impact plot development. And then the last element was our conflict. And as you can see, there's kind of a recurring theme here. Identify conflict, look at the cause and relationship between the conflict. Once again, this could be character motivation and the like. Assessing the conflict, who's involved, why, what does that say about people, and then analyzing how conflict moves plot, and or develop characters. So all of these are kind of incorporated or intertwined together because they all have an impact on plot. And then what we look at is we've highlighted our verbs or we've underlined them, and we move from level 1, identify, to level 4 of analyze. And we tend to do that in all three of these. So once we have these down and we've broken it down into what students are being asked to do, which are this middle area here, then we created a performance task from which we're going to backwards plan. So our performance task looks something like this. After reading blank, craft a response that includes an analysis of both plot and character development, and whether or not you felt the author was successful in creating an authentic, realistic storyline. Once again, these performance tasks can be created by teachers depending on what they want students to be able to know and do. There may not be too much sway because this evidence outcome over here is pretty specific and it connects nicely to this performance task. Then we're asking students to describe how the author develops the plot and be sure to discuss how the author used characters and conflict to move the plot towards its resolution. Support your reasoning and analysis with evidence from the text. And those, we all know that this here is huge in the new park assessments that we're going to be using here in the state of Colorado. So we felt that by looking at content knowledge, what students need to be able to know, and what students need to be able to do, we can break this down into manageable and measurable learning objectives, learning targets, and move on a progression of cognitive demand. So once we have this in place, then we can move towards looking at if this is what we're asking students to do at the end of, say, maybe a 3-week, 4-week reading unit, depending on where students are, because now we can create pre-assessments, which this could be a pre-assessment as well as a post-assessment. Then we can use this information and this task in order to backwards plan. So that is some of the work I did with teachers in understanding the state standards. And through understanding these state standards, how can we create manageable and measurable learning objectives that meet the needs of our students? And how can we make sure that we're challenging them to move from a level 1 of identifying up to level 3s and 4s, drawing conclusions and analyzing what it is they're reading. And of course, supporting themselves along the way with textual evidence.